A police officer walks up to your window and says, "Sir, before you drive any further, I need to make sure you're mentally alert. Step out and follow my finger." Your heart starts racing. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you're nervous. Maybe you've never dealt with police before. Then the officer says, "Count backward from 73. Stand on one leg. Touch your nose. Recite the alphabet without singing." Now you're thinking, do I have to do this? What happens if I refuse? Can they arrest me? And the biggest question of all, what should you never do in this moment? Because one mistake during a roadside cognitive test can completely change the direction of the stop. And most drivers accidentally make that mistake within the first 30 seconds. Here's what you need to understand. When an officer asks you to perform a cognitive or coordination test during a traffic stop, they are usually trying to gather evidence. They may suspect impairment. That could mean alcohol, drugs, medication, exhaustion, or even a medical issue. But the important part is this. These tests are often designed to create observations the officer can later describe in a report. Nervous, confused, couldn't maintain balance, slow responses, failed instructions. And once that goes into a report, it becomes evidence. That's why how you respond matters, not emotionally, not aggressively, strategically. In this video, you'll learn what officers are looking for during roadside cognitive tests, the biggest mistakes drivers make, the exact phrases you can use to protect yourself, and why staying calm matters more than trying to win the interaction. First mistake, talking too much. This is the trap almost everybody falls into. The officer says, "Have you had anything to drink tonight? You seem tired. Are you on medication? Why are your eyes red?" And suddenly the driver starts explaining everything. "I only had one beer. I worked a double shift. I take anxiety medication. I'm just stressed." The problem is that every extra sentence gives the officer more material to document. Even perfectly innocent explanations can become suspicious when written into a report later. That's why one of the safest responses is short, calm, and controlled. "Officer, I prefer not to answer questions." Simple, respectful, clear. Notice what that phrase does. It doesn't insult the officer. It doesn't escalate the stop. It simply stops you from volunteering information that may later be used against you. A lot of people think silence makes them look guilty, but talking too much creates far more problems than calm silence ever will. Second mistake, trying to pass the roadside test. This surprises people. Many drivers believe, if I cooperate fully and do well, the officer will let me go. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it does not. But here's the issue. Roadside cognitive and coordination tests are subjective. The officer is often evaluating divided attention, memory, balance, eye movement, and instruction following all at once. And nervousness alone can affect performance. Even sober people fail these exercises under pressure. You might miss a number, lose balance slightly, forget an instruction, look anxious. The officer may interpret all of that as impairment. So what should you do? This depends heavily on your state and the circumstances. Laws vary. In many places, roadside field sobriety tests are voluntary. In others, refusal may still have consequences depending on the situation. That's why you should never physically resist or argue roadside, but you can calmly clarify. "Officer, are these tests voluntary?" That question matters, because now you are seeking legal clarity instead of blindly complying out of fear. If the officer says they are voluntary, you may decide not to participate. A calm response could sound like this: "Respectfully, I do not wish to perform voluntary roadside tests." Notice the wording. Respectfully, do not wish, voluntary. No aggression, no attitude, no sudden movements, just calm communication. Third mistake, arguing science and law on the roadside. This is another disaster people create for themselves. The officer says, "Step over here," and the driver starts debating constitutional law. "You have no right. This is illegal. I know my rights. You can't do that." Listen carefully. The roadside is not the courtroom. Even if the officer is wrong, escalating emotionally usually makes the situation worse immediately. The safest approach is controlled non-compliance when appropriate, not aggressive confrontation. That means staying calm while verbally preserving your rights. For example, "I am not resisting. I want to comply with lawful orders. I do not consent to voluntary searches or tests." That combination matters. You are lowering tension while making your legal position clear. A huge mistake is turning a traffic stop into a personal battle. You do not get bonus points for winning an argument on the shoulder of the highway. Fourth mistake, making sudden movements during the encounter. This is critical. When people get nervous, they move too quickly. They reach into pockets, open doors suddenly, step out unexpectedly, turn around while talking. That can instantly raise tension. If the officer asks you to exit the vehicle, move slowly and narrate your actions. "Okay, officer, I'm going to unbuckle my seatbelt. My wallet is in my back pocket. I'm stepping out now." This helps reduce misunderstanding. Remember, officers are evaluating everything during these encounters, including body language, coordination, and reactions. Fast or erratic movements can be interpreted as danger, intoxication, or resistance. Fifth mistake, making consent to searches because you feel pressured. This often happens after the cognitive testing conversation begins. The officer says, "You don't mind me taking a quick look inside, right? If you've got nothing to hide, this won't be a problem." A lot of people panic here. They think refusing consent automatically makes them look guilty, but legally, consent changes everything. One of the safest phrases you can remember is, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Short, clear, non-aggressive. And here's why the wording matters. You are not physically resisting. You are not interfering. You are simply refusing permission. That distinction can become extremely important later. Now let's talk about one of the most important questions you can ask during any extended stop. Am I free to go or am I detained? This question forces legal clarity. If you are free to leave, the encounter may end. If you are detained, the officer must usually justify extending the stop based on legal standards that vary by situation and jurisdiction. Either way, the question helps establish where you stand legally. And if the situation escalates toward arrest or interrogation, stop talking about the facts of the case. This is where people often destroy their own defense. They try to explain. They try to talk their way out. They keep answering questions after being detained. Instead, use this. "I exercise my right to remain silent. I want to speak to a lawyer." These phrases are powerful because they are direct and unambiguous. You are clearly invoking constitutional protections instead of casually staying quiet while continuing the conversation. And remember this, once you invoke your right to remain silent, actually remain silent. Do not keep explaining afterward. Now, an important legal clarification. Laws involving roadside cognitive tests, field sobriety testing, chemical testing, and implied consent vary significantly by state and by country. In some jurisdictions, refusing certain post-arrest chemical tests may trigger license suspension or additional penalties. Some states treat roadside field sobriety exercises differently from breath or blood testing. That's why this video is educational, not personal legal advice. The goal is not to encourage confrontation with police. The goal is to help you avoid common mistakes during stressful encounters. So here's the safest overall framework. Stay calm, keep your hands visible, comply with lawful commands. Do not argue roadside. Do not volunteer unnecessary information. Do not consent to searches or voluntary tests unless you choose to after understanding the consequences. Ask whether you are detained, invoke your right to remain silent when necessary, and request a lawyer if the situation escalates. Most importantly, never let panic make decisions for you. Because during roadside cognitive testing, the officer is not just listening to your answers. They are watching your behavior, your movements, your emotions, your reactions under pressure.
And one careless moment can create evidence that follows you long after the traffic stop ends. In the next video, we're breaking down what happens when an officer says, "Just be honest with me and this will go easier," and why that sentence catches thousands of drivers off guard every single year.